Hi! We are here to talk to you about Star Search, specifically Level 3 Dance Solos. And the song that's assigned is We Will Make It There by Abby Gunderson. And the fun thing about this song is that it has no lyrics. So in order to help you know how to navigate that piece, we thought we would make a little video talking about how we might approach that.
And what you do doesn't have to look anything like what we're talking about. These are just the ideas that we came up with. So if you don't have a group of dancer friends to brainstorm with,
here we are.
So this is what we think. I'm excited to see what everybody does. That's not what we think.
Yeah. So the first thing I would do is we gave a scripture verse to help give you a jumping off point or a theme. So the scripture verse is 2 Corinthians 4, 7 through 16, which is a large portion of scripture. So I would start by reading through it and seeing if there's anything that pops out at you that's meaningful, because you want to care about what you're dancing about. So I would find something that you care about within that scripture and go from there.
Yeah, and everything that you dance doesn't necessarily have to be telling the story of the whole scripture. It doesn't need to be linear. It can just be an expression of one moment or one something you connected with specifically.
One word. Yeah. So then I would jump into just listening to it a bunch of times. So our first time listening, we just listened to it before we started the video, and we wrote down these time codes as moments in the music that felt like something was changing or something new entered. So that gives a little bit of framework so it's not just all music in the background.
And you can choose to really use the music to inspire your movement, or you can choose to ignore it, or you can choose to purposely not do what the music is doing. But this is a simple roadmap that anybody can follow. But my notes when I first start are just chicken scratch. Doesn't make any sense really, but is just the first step.
Yeah.
So from 0 till about 35 seconds, it's like still
Quiet.
Feels like slow motion movement.
Yeah. I was picturing, I like to come up with a motif, which is a movement or a series of movements that get repeated throughout a piece. That just helps my own head. So I was picturing in this beginning open space where there's pretty music happening in the background. It would be a good time to set up the clear, this picture is meaningful, this movement is meaningful, and doing it slowly, maybe changing. I don't know, you could play with speed, you could play with what the movement is, if it's a pose, if it's a move, if it's a series of movements. But that's what I was picturing with the opening, is kind of a setup for what could be meaningful through the rest of the piece.
Right. The audience likes to feel smart. So if you show them something and then you show them something again later that's familiar, they feel like they're understanding your vocabulary, like you're speaking the same language. Not to be confused with repeating chorus choreography exactly the same way every time. That's not the same.
The great news is there is no chorus, so you can't repeat.
You can't do it. So that's until about 35 seconds. Then until about 53 seconds. 35, and then to 53.
Email!
There's this string that comes through, violin or something, that creates this through line. And I just wrote down string, violin, through line. So there's something new that's introduced in the music. That's a great time to introduce something new in your movement. It might mean changing your speed. It might mean doing something completely different choreography altogether.
Yeah. In my mind, I also was putting a beginning, a middle, and an end. So the middle, we didn't get there yet. The strings would still be in my head. Doesn't have to be the same for you. The strings would still be part of the beginning, part of the setup. So you could have a series of moves, choreography that's like 4/8, 8/8, however much you want to come up with, that could fit in with the strings music. So when they come in, that's an audible cue for you of where you are in the music and what movement you want to start doing at that point.
Then at 120,
it's the middle.
There's a big change in the music. It's more joyful. It feels like music that could be joyful and hopeful, but also filled with like turmoil at the same time, which is perfect for the theme of that clash of being struck down but not destroyed, persecuted, not abandoned, those opposing feelings. So it worked. That kind of music is great for going many different emotional directions.
If you decided to tell a story that started with you in a happy place in the beginning, this big change would be the conflict, right? Like the middle part of the story where things aren't going very well, and then it can get resolved later on. But that would happen somewhere in this big section.
Then finally, the climax of the song at 151, it's exciting. There's lots of new sounds being introduced.
Voices come in at that point. That would be the moment to throw in your biggest, best dance move.
Without making it look like a series of tricks.
Right. It feels like a release, which could be huge jumps. It could be a turn. It could be just dropping, right? It doesn't always have to be something super impressive. You just want to be able to express the release of whatever it is you're expressing. So however that looks, maybe it's falling on the floor. I don't know. Could be anything. But that's the moment.
And then all of a sudden at 2:22, the music just drops down to very little, kind of circling back to that feeling we had at the beginning. It's always nice to bookend your pieces with something that the audience recognizes as far as do you want to finish the way you started in the same position? Are we entering from the side and exiting from the side? So don't get to the end and then start thinking about, how am I going to end it? See your piece as a whole, as a story, or as an expression, or as something, not just I gotta crawl through this and we'll see what happens.
An easy way to do that, this is a good choreographer's cheat, is to use the same choreography at the end that you used at the beginning, but change where you're facing. Because it'll look totally different if they're watching it from a different facing. And maybe you only face a different way for half of it. If some of it's weird and your back's to the audience half the time, you don't have to do that. But it's a good way to bookend it, simplifies how much choreography you have to remember, and it looks different to the person watching. And that's how we would do it. Good luck!